Hey all, welcome back. Today I wanted to ask and answer a question to an interesting but not well-known part of Halo lore. Why does the UNSC have a maritime navy? That's right, you may not know it, but the UNSC has made use of a seafaring navy for centuries, including up to the end of the Human Covenant War. You can even see some aircraft carriers on a Halo 3 multiplayer map, and the drones we saw in Halo 3 ODST's campaign were deployed from those same carriers. So, the UNSC has a seafaring navy, but why? When you can deploy everything you could ever want from orbit, what would be the point in having an aircraft carrier in the ocean? Who would it even fight ordinarily? Well, today I'm going to present my theories and also explain the origins of the concept for the aircraft carriers. Before we get into it though, the YouTube algorithm is an unforgiving god who knows less mercy than Halo players with a grunt birthday party skull on. You could help me gain favor with it by liking and subscribing. Now, let's get into it. Before we get into the lore, let's talk about the actual origins for those aforementioned aircraft carriers. You see, back during Halo 3's development, there was a lot of content that was either partially developed, made into concepts, or it was completed but got cut due to hardware limitations. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Cut space combat, a massive mode or level called Global Battle, literal giants, and more. In fact, Halo 5 wasn't even the first game to have a Forerunner Guardian in it. Halo 3 technically was. Bungie had a scrapped mission called Guardian Forest, which had a boss that was called, you guessed it, the Guardian. The level did not make it into the final game, but we did get a very neat multiplayer map out of it. As a side note, Bungie is kind of known for its messy code and also its tendency to leave unfinished things in its games. Halo 3 is no exception, and Rejected Shotgun was actually able to remake the Guardian boss fight as a mod. I've linked the video below. It is awesome. Go check it out when you're done with this. So what does cut content have to do with the UNSC having boats? Well, you probably already figured it out. Originally, the UNSC was supposed to have a wet navy in Halo 3, which included an aircraft carrier, but ultimately that got cut. I'm not sure as to the origins of the model of the aircraft carrier we see hinking around in the background of Halo 3's multiplayer, but if I had to guess, I'd say it was just Bungie making use of assets they had lying around to add some personality to the maps, some pizzazz. So in lore, why does the UNSC have a seafaring navy? In truth, we have no clue. We only know they have one, and that is about it. But I have theories. It all comes down to how warfare has changed over time in Halo. Yes, you are right to point out that the UNSC does not have other human nations to fight on a planet. The majority of naval combat happens in space, and typically it comes from an invading Covenant, banished, or other foreign force, so it really seems like a waste to dedicate people and materials to the ocean. But here is the thing. The UNSC is really young on the galactic stage when it comes to space combat. The interplanetary wars primarily took place on the surface of planets and moons, with the action in space most likely consisting of UNSC Marines, Kosloviks, or Freedens boarding enemy ships and stations. We do not know much about space warfare prior to the insurrection, though that is simply because drawn-out battles in space were really just theory until insurrectionist groups like the URF cropped up. Halo Canon and I discussed this in another video if you're curious, but to sum it all up, the UNSC really only learned how to fight in space after a number of CMA and UNSC ships either defected to the insurrectionist cause or they were hijacked. Take the Callisto incident for example, where rebels took control of the UNSC Callisto, prompting the UNSC to send 3 ships to bring it down. It took the actions of Preston J. Cole and the disabling or sacrifice of the entire battle group before the battle was resolved. This was effectively the first true example of opposing ships fighting each other in space. The point is, the UNSC Navy, as it was by the end of the Covenant War, was a far cry from what it was for the majority of its existence. Magnetic accelerator cannons were not widely utilized outside of capital ships. Orbital defense platforms were literally theory and politics during the earlier parts of Avery Johnson's life, and the longsword wasn't even in service until the insurrection. So this is where the wet navy comes in. The UNSC and CMA are military bodies on paper, but for most of their existence, they acted more as policing entities than anything else, and no matter how advanced you get, crime still occurs. Planets like Reach or Earth, which have huge bodies of water, would ironically be very vulnerable to criminal enterprises because the oceans provide a unique means of safe transportation for someone trying to slip past the authorities. Oceans are vast and difficult to monitor. Even with satellites, drones, and more, it's very, very tough to catch people. I'm not sure as to the statistic of crime related to the ocean, but nonetheless you get the point. There are a lot of reasons countries stick to patrolling near their coasts for both legal and practical reasons, of course. International laws aside, it is easier to just ensure your coastline is secure and catch people on the way in rather than secure the entire ocean. Crime groups have even been known to use submarines before, and if that seems unbelievable, no, believe it. These things really do happen. As an example, the US Coast Guard once caught a submarine carrying, a lot of sugar, if you catch my drift. I'll show you a very brief clip and I'll link it in the description below, but yeah, I hope it gives you a new appreciation for the Coast Guard.
Alto barco! Alto barco! That's gonna be hard to get on! Alto barco!
Back to lore, we also know, thanks to HaloInfinite's Become ad campaign, that the UNSC does in fact have something akin to, you guessed it, a Coast Guard. What about the aircraft carriers? Why are they around? Well, I'm not super well versed in maritime navies or aircraft outside of famous battles, so I went to an excellent source for knowledge with absolutely no chance of falsehoods. The internet. Yeah, so aircraft carrier nerds, if I say something wrong or misinterpret a piece of information, definitely feel free to correct me. I would love to learn. Basically, from what I understand, aside from just carrying and launching aircraft carriers, extend the range of air operations, maintain, rearm, and refuel aircraft, and more. In today's world, they're useful for power projection since they don't violate territorial claims when they sail in international waters. In the case of Halo, that last bit doesn't really matter because maritime wars just don't happen anymore. So, I have a few theories. The first one, the UNSC or colonial equivalent of a Coast Guard mainly uses aircraft carriers to extend the range of their maritime and air operations. We know from Halo 3 that UNSC aircraft carriers make use of VTOL-capable craft like Pelicans, and whatever they call their Coast Guard uses Falcons in search and rescue operations, so to me, this makes sense. In the case of a sudden humanitarian disaster, such as a catastrophic earthquake, these carriers could play a vital role in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, perhaps being a hub for medical airlifts or supply runs, airlifts, excuse me. Maybe if they have the proper facilities and staff, one of the aircraft carriers could even act as a mobile hospital. Oftentimes, and especially in the case of unexpected or sudden catastrophes that cause a lot of damage, authorities either are not prepared or they are just too late to respond, period. Perhaps there were engineering oversights in infrastructure, political infighting, new and unexpected events as a result of the disaster, exaggerated media inflaming the problem, or just flat-out incompetence. Even with sufficient warnings, a populated city can be devastated by a powerful hurricane if just one of those things happens, or worse, all of them. As unbelievable as this sounds, this is a very real thing. Just ask anyone in New Orleans that lived there in 2005. Of course, given how far in the future Halo is set, we just do not know how drastic changes in procedures, technology, and political landscapes would affect humanitarian responses. That said, ultimately no amount of knowledge, confidence, or advancement can account for human ineptitude. Many major modern disasters are a result of shortcomings on our end, from melting reactors to hurricanes to broken dams, and I personally just don't see this changing. So with that said, if the aircraft carriers are theoretically meant for more Coast Guard related purposes, why are they so combat focused in Halo 3? Well, this is where my next two theories come into play. In theory, during an emergency, the UNSC Air Force or Navy could probably nab aircraft carriers if they have to. Or, there are also combat-focused aircraft carriers because the UNSC, again, is young when it comes to space warfare. I wouldn't be surprised if they had constructed and deployed aircraft carriers in the outer colonies at the beginning of the insurrection. But those are my theories. Honestly, I'm making this video to spark conversation, and I would love to see what all of you come up with. So let me know what your theories are in the comments or in my Discord. And hey, if you want to see more of me, consider liking and subscribing. And if you like me, and you want benefits or early access to things like The Greatest Battle, my Patreon is up too. Speaking of which, a very special thank you to Salvatore Di Pietro, sorry for butchering your name, I'm bad with this, for being the first member of ONI Section 2. Your contributions to the UNSC's propaganda, 100% true and unbiased, not run by the Office of Naval Intelligence News Network, is greatly appreciated. All that said and done, I will see you in the cosmos, friends.